Hey guys, back again with another guide video, this time focused on Apocalyptic Shadow's new boss, Feixiao. I'll also be touching up a bit on Hoolay as he's on the other side, but just know that this will be a Feixiao focused video today. As always, feel free to check the description below and skip to whatever timestamps you need. A copy of this slideshow will also be available in the description for viewing, and if you'd like, feel free to fill out your own clears using the Google form below. With that being said, let's get right into it. For this round of AS buffs, we have an SP recovery buff, which is great for skill point hungry DPS like Archer and Anaxa, as well as for supports like Branya and Kafka. Keep in mind that the maximum skill points that can be recovered from this is 5, so if you have characters like Sparkle and Archer that increase your SP cap, you may not see your SP being refunded to full. As for ultimates, the recovery is really great for characters that have high ult costs like Saber, characters who love the influx of energy like RMC, as well as characters who may struggle with ult uptimes like Robin and Phynon. As for the increased damage taken, it benefits DOT and skills this time, which is great for those respective archetypes. As for the selectable buffs, the first buff for Hoolay, Fight in Unity, is great for skill point hungry DPS, especially Archer, but also including Anaxa, who loves to spam his skill. The Tangled Chaos buff is your usual break buff, which increases break damage up to 60%, with it ramping up each time an enemy is defeated. This is particularly great for DPS like Firefly. The No Turning Back buff is also pretty great, this time though for HP consumers like Casters and Hyacine. Realistically, I was thinking about putting Blade on here, but I know most of y'all will probably end up using Hyacine for her sub DPS more than Blade, to be honest. So for Node 2, this will be our ultimate focus buff, which will help characters that focus on ults like Acheron and Saber, giving them 30% more damage as well as another 30% against weakness broken enemies. The DOT buff is the DOT buff, there's not much to say about it. It's just an extra trigger every time you use your basic and skill on weakness broken enemies, which is particularly nice for these characters that have blast skills like Kafka and Black Swan, as well as Jiao Cho even, as well as characters like Hycelens, who has an AoE skill. The Heroic Vanguard buff is pretty notable since it is an ultimate focus buff that increases crit damage by 50% as well as weakness break efficiency. However, it only lasts for one turn, which is quite notable and is mainly intended for Phynon, who can extend that extra turn throughout the whole duration of his ultimate, giving him permanent uptime on it. It is nice for just break DPS though that appreciate the 50% weakness break efficiency, even if it's just for a single attack. As for updates compared to the last time we saw Hoolay, the main change is that both him and his wolves have increased their HP by about 40%. This is pretty rough in general, but especially for those DPS that rely on kills in order to smooth out their rotations. So think your RNG Anaxa bounces, your Sela ult resets, those kinds of things will be much more difficult with an extra like 34k HP on each of the wolf troopers. That being said, we do have lots more new troops, including the free Archer, who can skill spam to play around Hulay's going solo window, as well as Saber, who has multiple ways to advance herself up within the same turn to hopefully cut ahead of Hoolay before he forces a DPS into the duel. We also have Hyacine now, who really just absolutely lets casters wreck the stage even harder than she did before. Upcoming in the future, we have Ceridra, whose double skill will work for departed characters, which is notable in going solo. It's obviously best for Phynon and Anaxa, but it can be good and probably abusable with just about anyone. Here's who I speculate to be Hoolay's best counters. Anaxa and Castris already have proven track records, as do Feixiao and Boothill, with Phynon being uniquely suited to survive against Hoolay's duel, since he's already balanced about being the only character in the team anyways. Saber and Archer have multiple ways to perform multiple actions in the span of 0 AV, with Saber constantly advancing herself, and Archer just taking 5 skills in a single turn. As for the breakers, they're great for survivability, with Xue follow-up attacks being notable, allowing her to heal off multiple times in a single turn, whereas Firefly has self-healing and damage reduction built in her kit already. As for the counters, Yun Li is Yun Li. Blade did receive some buffs, so I'm moving him up for now, And Clara is pretty alright, but she does have that AoE skill, which is good for killing off those wolves. Characters that need unique setups, like the Herda, who needs a Naxa, Maide, who needs to rely on killing wolves, and Sela, who does the same, both of who really don't like doing Hoolay head-on, are pretty notable for just having potentially good performance, but most of the time, unless you know what you're doing, you're better off using someone else. I'm not sure if DOT is good here, especially given their dominant performance on the other side, but in case they are, I'll just give them an honorable mention here. And as for the very lowest tier, these are DPS that really don't work that well or are kind of memes like Silver Wolf. As for supports, you'll either want weakness break efficiency to directly break Hoolay faster, or more turns to kill the wolves faster. Bonus points if they can give more HP to help the DPS tank going solo better. Interestingly, Ceridra's skills sit somewhere in the middle, assisting with both since her skill doubling still works while she's departed. Chibi's amp and personal damage is also significant, especially given the rise in Wolf Trooper HP. And as for your usual niches, Fugue is great with Super Break, Sparkle with Archer, Tingyun for energy and low AV clears, Silver Wolf for off-element and single-target amp needs, Cyper for follow-up attacks, and Branya as a Sunday with 30% speed on her E2, and Harmony advancing capabilities with a little bit less of the buffs. Other supports can work, like Yukong with Finon in the short term, Jiaoqiu with Acheron, Heislins and Kafka with DOT, and Topaz and Asta, who can tank Hoolay reasonably well with their high single-target toughness, but their use cases are much more narrow. Hanya doesn't really work here as an archer substitute, unfortunately, due to her burden expiring early on the Wolf Troopers and being unrefreshable during Hoolay's duel. Pella also suffers from uptime issues and is off-element. The only thing new on the sustain end is Hyacine being added to the sub-DPS category, especially with both her and Ika attacking every Hoolay round. The rest of these categories should be self-explanatory, with Bailu being notably better than she normally is due to the lack of CC present. Alright, now onto Feixiao, and hoo boy, she is the DOT shill by far, and it's not even close. I've even placed a 4-star DOT unit somewhat in the middle due to just how favorable being part of that archetype is for this boss. Do note that all 4 of her parts' weaknesses are physical, with 3 out of 4 of each of the rest of the weakness elements, so physical gains a slight edge here, especially since the rest of the weaknesses are spaced out such that you can't hit all 3 with a single blast attack. As such, DPS who can either implant or ignore their own weakness while being able to hit multiple targets are pretty premium here. Finon is actually the most subject to bounce RNG here, but his damage capabilities are high enough that I feel like he belongs in a higher tier for now. I might have to revisit that in the future though. Argenti is honestly a sleeper pick here, with there being 4 physical weak targets at all times. I also think Silver Wolf at E1 or higher will perform pretty similarly, what with being able to spam her ult against 4 quantum weak targets thanks to her implant. Casterus and Blade also have a pretty good standing, especially with their good Hyacine synergy, and Jade has pretty nice Linksha synergy to help with breaking as well. The Hunt units in Aglaya are probably going to be a tier below, due to this fight just naturally being 4 targets shared HP, but I'm sure that they'll punch above their weight class with dedicated enough play, especially Feixiao. I've placed March and Mosaic together, but honestly, March might just be way better due to her higher toughness reduction. All of that being said, though, you'd much rather run them on the other side versus Hoolay anyways. Yun Li, Jingyun, and Shui do seem like they could work, but their bounces are too unreliable for me to confidently recommend them at the present moment. The Herda needs a Naxa, and honestly, so might Rappa, given how thick these toughness bars are. Being off-element is a death sentence versus this stage. Honorable mentions to Himiko and Hook, whose kit included burns can help ever so slightly, but don't fix their horrible matchups on their own. And because I know that brute forcers, either dedicated mains or memers, will try and make their favorites work, I've included a few that I think could have a chance. Test at your own peril. You may be surprised to see Heislins here as a generic support on par with Ron, Mei, and Robin, but adding 60 toughness to your wolf attacks and 120 if she's E1 is kind of a big deal. Also, her amp isn't even that bad. It's 38% with no defense shred, 53% with pearls and no defense shred, and She does have minus 15% attack, which is honestly pretty useful for tanking Fei's onslaught. As for the other two supports, Robin is Robin, and Ron Mei is especially invaluable versus a breaking stage, especially since she's a prime wolf candidate due to her buffs being active just by existing. Jiao Qiu might be an interesting choice for Dot and Acheron teams that already want him, as a perma burn paired with decent amp seeds particularly valuable usage this stage. Chibi and Silverwolf contribute quantum toughness of their own as well, with Chibi having the stronger synergies and Wolfie having the stronger utility via her implant. Other more niche supports that deal pretty decent toughness, all things considered, are Ceredra for Finite and Anaxa, Fugue for Break, and Cypher for Follow-Up. Normally, Cypher's pretty generic, but her toughness being single target is a notable demerit versus this stage. RMC, Tinian, and Sunday are great as ever, especially in an alt refresh rotation, and HMC, Guinaifen, and Yukong are, I believe, some of the weakest, but still technically useful supports within their archetypes. Hanya, Topaz, and maybe even Pella could work, but being single target, or in Pella's case, off element, is not encouraging. As for sustains, it's pretty much the same situation as Hoolay, except Gallagher's lack of AoE makes him ever so slightly worse, while shielders are ever so slightly better due to their ability to hold trend. If the new Preservation Danheng has any form of AoE in his kit too, he'll also be fantastic at helping to break. Alrighty, that's enough speculative yapping about Feixiao's matchups. What does she actually do? Well, she's the tankiest boss yet, having a whopping 3.1 million more shared HP than Banana Academics, aka a 56% increase, while also having one less shared enemy HP to hit. Her win condition is pretty simple though. Break 3 of the 4 toughness bars to break the boss, then go all in on damage. Fei herself has 280 toughness, while the 3 wolf parts have 220 toughness each. She's the fastest at 190 speed, followed by the wolf's claw, then the tail, then the head. They all have 40% res to their non-weak elements, as well as 40% F-res, so make sure you aren't slacking on your EHR if running her intended DOT matchup. At the start of battle, these are the speed breakpoints you'll want to hit in order to outspeed each of the different enemies. Note that most speedrunning teams will likely finish Phase 1 around 79 AV at fastest, as that's when Feixiao activates her wolf mechanic, aka a free break for DOT. As for Phase 2, Fei herself acts immediately, with the wolf parts being pushed down to 120, 130, and 140 AV respectively. Here's how fast you need to be to lap them twice, by the way. Since their first turn happens right away, there's a lot less waiting for the next wolf, putting the wolf turn itself at around 26 AV and thus the realistic DOT score ceiling at around 3894. Feixiao's attack patterns are heavily inspired from her Echo of War version, with most of her damage scalings even being 1-to-1, accounting for level differences and the current enemy attack baseline of 663. Before getting into her though, let's get into what the wolf parts do since they're much more simple. The claw always does a blast swipe for about 1050 damage, and when resonated deals 1650 damage instead. The tail does an AoE for 850, which when resonated powers up to 1250 on top of having a high chance to weaken everyone. The head also does an 850 AoE with a 1250 resonated variant, but its debuff variant this time is a pretty nasty AoE outrage. So the natural question is, how do these parts get resonated? Well, on turn 1 of Phase 1, Fei herself performs a weaker single target attack for 1050, then resonates both the tail and the head, as well as advances her next action by 50%. Turn 2 is the defining unique mechanic of this fight though, and bears a striking similarity to Hoolay, where you choose a character to transform and immediately take damage. Instead of going solo though, this ally transforms into a Bloodstained Lupine Wolf Trooper, sort of like a discount Ethereum Wars mechanic. This Wolf Trooper gets to attack immediately, choosing between a 10 toughness basic that heals and a 20 toughness skill with 10 toughness on blast with a chance to inflict bleed. Since your normal attacks are locked down in this mode, I'd recommend picking a character you're comfortable saying bye to for 3 turns like a support or a sustain. While this attack alone isn't that impactful, it gains 15 toughness per every DOT inflicted on the enemy, which does not diminish during the blast scaling by the way, letting it very easily 1 or 2 break the boss with high Silence and Crew. After 3 attacks are used up, or after Feixiao is broken, whichever comes first, the wolf returns to normal, and you get your character back at whatever AV it should normally be at. Also keep in mind that this wolf does get like 100% speed boost, so it does help to have it kind of on the field. Anyways, now that that explanation's out of the way, Fei follows up this Alpha Wolf transformation with a slightly stronger single target attack. For the rest of Phase 1, she then alternates between her weaker single target and charge, the weaker single target again, and her stronger single target attack. As for Phase 2, she opens with her stronger single target attack and subsequent charge on turn 1. As for turn 2, it's the usual transformation, followed by her charging all 3 parts while also delaying everyone by an amount equal to 200% of her AV. Safe to say you get a lot of time to break as many parts as possible. And well, you'll definitely need that time, as Fei's next attack is a powerful AoE that hits for 1550, but also powers up for each resonated part left on field, hitting for as hard as 4500 damage. And unless you're a caster Sir Finon team, ain't nobody living that. The unique upside to breaking resonated enemies, though, is that your team basically gets an S3DD proc out of it, advancing by 20%. This holds true for both phases, by the way. Resonating also shows up in the action order as Fei queuing up a joint attack, indicated with a red hue, and being right above the resonated part in the action order. Breaking the resonated part will desync Fei from her part. And in case you'd like a visual for Phase 2's pre-nuke delay, here it is. Technically, Fei and the parts should all be pushed down to 106 AV, but I'm guessing there's some rounding errors at play. Anyways, that's all I've got for now. Hope you found this helpful, and let me know if you'd like me to revisit this guide in the future, because I know for sure I probably misjudged or missed something with these early impressions. With that said, good luck with your AS clears, I'm going to be starting mine tomorrow, and have a great day.